Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio, episode number 335. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
And we're here this week to review and discuss Gone in 60 Seconds as it celebrates its 25th anniversary. I remember when this movie came out, it was like a phenomenon. It was marketed like crazy. I remember seeing the commercials all over the television, posters in every movie theater. I mean, they really put a lot into this. I remember when it came out on home video, the walls in every video store were just lined with copies of this movie. Like this, at the time at least, I thought, was a massive, massive success.
And somehow it completely eluded me because I had never seen it. You know, it was one of those titles that I had always known, but sitting down to review it for the show, this was my first time watching it. Had you seen it, though?
I had seen it once, and if I'm being honest with you, I didn't go back and watch it again. And frankly, it's because when this movie came out, there were some other films that started to come out, and if, you know, full disclosure, some of those movies were embraced by the Axe body spray, affliction shirt culture that I had no tolerance for. And with that said, I just never went back to revisit it because as much as I love Nicolas Cage and I love a good action film, I love NASCAR, but outside of that, like, I'm not really a car guy. I love sports, as everybody well knows, but like, cars are just not really my thing. They never have been. I've tried to get into them. I just can't. So I was interested to sit this week to see if I remembered anything from the first time I watched it. Spoiler, I didn't. And I was wondering if I was going to look back on this and wonder if the film was very much a product of its time and if it still sort of has the allure today that it did when it came out 25 years ago.
Well, I think to your point, too, and I don't blame you for not revisiting it for all of those reasons, it does feel very much like an oversaturated market just by virtue of the Fast and the Furious being so huge with Universal. And I mean, that's really sort of the tradition, especially with these Touchstone and Hollywood Pictures films that Disney is producing, is it was either an answer to another studio's franchise or they were looking to do a retelling of one of their stories that's maybe a bit more adult and a bit more edgy. So I really thought that it was like, oh, Universal's doing a Cars movie? Well, we have to do a Cars movie. But not really the case because this came just before Fast and the Furious, you know, big summer blockbusters, obviously. But this was actually a remake of a 1974 film that Disney decided to do. And what's most shocking to me, I think, is that this is a Jerry Bruckheimer film, and he's had such a long-lasting partnership with Michael Bay. I mean, Michael Bay had done Armageddon a couple of years earlier, but like, you don't get him for a freaking Cars movie of all things, really?
Well, does this film stand the test of time? How does it compare to some of the other films that came out after it? And why was this not the massive success that I assumed that it was? That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Fierce Fox Co., designers of handmade silkscreen shirts. Fierce Fox has a t-shirt, tank top, hoodie, or crew neck for every fandom. So whether it's the movies or theme parks, princesses or villains, the MCU or Star Wars, everyone will find something they love. The designs range from subtle quotes from our favorite films to iconic characters we can wear proudly in so many different styles, such as sketchbook and concert tees. Listeners of Monoreel Radio can get a 20% discount using the code Monoreel at checkout. Visit fiercefoxco.com to check out all of the collections.
Kip Raines is working for Raymond Calitri to steal 50 high-end cars. After stealing a Porsche and creating a scene, he leads police to the warehouse where the cars are being held, which are then impounded. Atlee Jackson, one of Calitri's associates, goes to Kip's brother Memphis to tell him that Kip botched the job and has now been kidnapped. Memphis enjoys a life away from crime, as he is a reformed car thief, but agrees to go with Atlee to help his brother. Calitri releases Kip to Memphis and agrees to spare his life so long as they can steal 50 cars within 72 hours, because Calitri has buyers that he needs to keep happy. Needing help, Memphis begins to put a crew together of former associates, Otto, Donnie, Sphinx, and Sarah, all of whom are now legit but are convinced to help him save his brother and split the $200,000 payment coming from Calitri. They narrow down their list of cars to steal and plan to steal all of them in one night, as a rival gang is looking to kill Kip and Memphis for hurting their business. Detectives Kesselbeck and Drykoff have been working the case, and they learn that Kip bribed an employee at a Mercedes dealership to order laser-cut transponder keys, meaning that they can stake out the specific Mercedes cars that are on the list of cars to be stolen. After Kesselbeck visits the crew in their warehouse, he concludes that they are going to move forward with their heist that night. The night starts successfully, but Memphis sees that as the night goes on, the police are tracking them, so he calls everyone back. They realize that Kesselbeck planted the models of Mercedes to be stolen, so the crew decides to break into the police impound to steal the previously stolen models of Mercedes. However, they need to wait to steal them, as Otto's dog has eaten the quote-unquote clean Mercedes keys. Once they get the keys back, they boost the cars from the impound. Meanwhile, detectives have found the list of targeted cars from the previous heist and begin to stake out the rarest ones on the list. The crew narrowly evades police, including Memphis, who steals Eleanor, a 1967 Shelby. That was the last one that he was taking, and he had done so intentionally. The passenger side mirror is damaged during the pursuit, which causes Memphis to arrive 12 minutes past Calitri's deadline. Calitri instructs his men to kill Memphis. However, he is rescued by Kip and Atlee. Kesselbeck and Drykoff arrive at the warehouse, leading to Kesselbeck nearly being killed, but he is saved by Memphis, who kills Calitri. He lets Memphis go, and in return he tells them the location of the stolen cars so that they can end the heist. The movie ends with a celebratory barbecue, which Kip then presents an old, beat-up 1967 Shelby to his brother as thanks, which they will then restore, giving his brother Memphis and Eleanor of his own. So, opening credits of this movie, I actually think, the graphics aside, which just feel very dated, just like that 90s, you know, with a bunch of stuff like flying across. But the what I love about it is it's sort of panning the house/office. You see racing trophies. You see photographs of Kip and Memphis in their adolescence. You obviously see that there's an age gap between the two. You can see how Kip sort of looks up to his older brother. I think it does a really good job of setting up who these characters are before we even see them.
I'm sorry, I'm still laughing at your impression of that opening credits synthy chord. It's because it's so spot on. It's so true. I disagree with you, actually. I like the transition from the Jerry Bruckheimer logo right into, because it's cars. His logo is the road. So I thought that was really nice and seamless and clever. But I feel like because they are exposing, or at least trying to expose, so much backstory in these credits, we needed clearer pictures and we needed holds on the shots longer, because you're right. They do a good job with the family photos, but there is a picture of Memphis and Sway. It is a split second. I believe that he's in a tux and she's in a white dress. I think we're supposed to take away from that they were married at one point, but because it happens so fast, like, it could have been prom, it could have been a wedding. We don't know. So, like, that I feel should have been more clearly defined. I mean, that they're exes, by the time they start to rekindle their relationship later on. But an ex-girlfriend and an ex-wife that you've started building a life with, and then you just left her flat, like two very different things. So I just wish there was a little bit more clarity there. But other than that, I like the song. I think that works. And I like how it goes right into this opening heist. I thought that was pretty cool. You know, it gets us in right away. It establishes that Kip leaps before he looks, and that he's pretty fearless and he doesn't care. But he's sloppy because obviously he's got the cops right on his tail.
This is awful. Like, this is an awful lot of police for what is really at this point. I mean, we know it's a stolen vehicle. The police do not know that it is a stolen vehicle. This is a lot for reckless driving. Like, somehow they've got 6 or 8 SWAT cars that are following them, a helicopter, all for really just, as the police officer said, assumed speed of 80 miles an hour.
Well, you know, late 90s, 2000s LA.
Yeah.
What I do remember, though, the one line from the trailer, and the only thing that I remember from all of this press and advertising and marketing that they did for this film, is when one of the characters says, "This ain't the Dukes of Hazzard."
Yeah.
But I remember so specifically that audio bite from the trailer.
So you go right into Memphis is teaching kids how to race with go-karts. I think that the pacing, it's very, very fast, but I think it's actually pretty good because I don't think you needed to spend an awful lot of time fleshing him out up to this point. You see that he's there. Atlee Jackson shows up. He's teaching kids how to race. Maybe it's just because you know enough from the trailer to know who the character is, but I don't think they needed... The movie has a long enough running time. Most of that is spent on car chases. You didn't need a 2-hour and 45-minute movie to flesh out characters like this.
I would agree with that, and that's probably why they did the opening credits the way that they did, painting out this history, especially because in an action film, you don't want to hear all of that in the dialogue. You don't want Atlee showing up and be like, "Remember how you left everybody?" You know?
Yeah.
You'd lose us in the first 2 minutes of this film, especially when you've sucked us in with this opening action sequence. I like where we meet Memphis. It clearly establishes, to your point, that he's been removed from his former life, but I do wish there was a little bit more clarity if it was by choice or by force. We're obviously going to get that a little bit later on, but I feel like because he goes back so quickly for the brother, I feel like seeing him contemplate the decision to go back would have been nice. I mean, to your point, they've already established that there is an age gap between the two. So naturally, his instinct is going to be, I have to be the big brother. I have to go protect him. But because we don't fully know why he left, and it's not just so that his brother, to try and prevent his brother from entering this lifestyle, you know, he's got cops after him. He's a known guy because of all of these escapades. Like, having a little bit of a beat of like, I can't go back, I'm going to make it worse. It would have fleshed out the character a little bit more. And it would have, I don't think it would have been a pace killer because the movie does move pretty quickly. Because we meet our villain right away. He's got Kip. I love where they have Kip. Is it an obvious choice for a Cars movie? Yeah, maybe. But it's still a really striking visual. And it establishes that our villain is not going to be messing around. But I love how they not soften him, but they give him all of the comic relief because, you know, he's set up to be the big bad. He's answering to somebody who's even worse because he's got to deliver all of these cars, but he's also obsessively making all of this furniture, and he's just getting into coffins, which I thought was really funny, but it's also, you know, a device of you're going to be the first one in there.
He's like obsessively British. That's the weird thing. Like, he is like the British villain because, of course, we needed a British villain. And it's almost like, I do the cars for money, but my passion's furniture. Like, these cars are below me. The beauty and art that is fine furniture is really what I'm interested in. Yeah, it's so bizarre in all of the right ways. And, like, at first I was like, well, I want to know more about who you're answering to. But then after a while, I'm like, no, you know what? I really don't care about the person that you're answering to, because you're interesting enough in and of yourself. And then we don't see you for like an hour. He's just gone.
He's so eccentric, but that's what works perfectly, is that it toes the line just enough where he's not completely off the rails. And he never goes full, you know, he's not one of these like loud, screaming, yelling villains. He's my favorite kind because he's just so monotone and menacing in that way. But the eccentricities are like just enough to keep him funny, but not out there enough where you ever think that he's going to lose control. So obviously, naturally, Memphis gets sucked back into the lifestyle for the sake of saving his brother. I do like how it's presented to him, though. Like, you got three options. I kill your brother now. You lie to me and say that you're going to agree, and then you try and skip town and I kill you anyway, or you just do what I'm asking you to do. It's a great setup, and then I feel like the next couple of scenes are very much screenwriting and plot exposition 101. Like, we get the breakfast scene with Memphis and Kip, where Kip is trying to cook him breakfast and like break the ice a little bit, but it just feels very 101. Like, you are estranged siblings. We know this. And then you know, Memphis goes to see his mom to let her know that he's back in town. And as soon as he walks out of the diner, the detective is there doing Shakedown 101. So this is where, you know, for as good a job as they do of keeping the pace moving through dialogue heavy scenes, it just feels very formulaic.
Yeah, I think that certainly in the late 90s, when this film was written and put into development and filmed, obviously, with it being released in 2000, this was happening in the late 90s. Like, I don't think they really cared. I think that this was just, it's a popcorn movie. They're stealing cars. You get it. These were made to be sort of cheap. Like, not cheap as in low budget, per se, but let's just say a majority of the effort and budget went into the special effects, and a good trailer. Like, people forget, like, a good trailer was enough. I don't think a modern audience now understands what a good trailer could do for a movie. And all we needed to see was Nicolas Cage, Angelina Jolie stealing cars. Like, if I'm being honest with you, I completely forgot that this was a heist movie to save his brother. I thought they were just stealing cars, because that's what the trailer leads you to believe, is they're just bad guys stealing cars. That's all you needed to see, and that's
right.
What you thought that it was. So this is, you know, sort of in a roundabout way, just to kind of sum it up, they didn't care about making these characters very deep because the action was enough. It was how you were going to spend your $7.50, because that's what it used to cost to go to a movie on a Friday night. This is what you wanted to see.
No, that's a really fair point, because this genre, all of the studios had them. You did your big action films with your, big celebrity casts, but you were never looking to win an Oscar. You knew that the screenplay was not going to be enough to get you that Best Picture nomination, but you put it out because it was a moneymaker. And that's a really good reminder that you're bringing that up, because I think that may be what Marvel changed so much about the game. Because even though they are superhero films, I think if you really had to pinpoint a genre for them, they're action-driven films. But because they had so much heart and there's so much effort, some of them did get Best Picture Oscar nominations. And I feel like people forget that, like, it doesn't have to be one and the same. You can have all of these subgenres and, well, not anymore. They don't make money anymore at the theaters. But, yeah, it was just, it is a sign of the times and how different it was back then.
Yeah, I mean, The Dark Knight, I've said this before, The Dark Knight changed a lot when it came to action movies, comic book movies, etc., and so forth. These studios would make a movie like The Pianist knowing nobody's going to go see it, but it's going to win us an Oscar.
Exactly.
We're going to make movies like this because it's going to shine at the Razzies, but it's going to make us a ton of money. Movies like this are what offset the losses of making your award-winning artsy films. That's how this used to be, and now everything has to be a franchise. And if it isn't, most studios don't want to touch it if they can't make it into a franchise and spin it off and make toys out of it and merchandise and whatever. And I think that that's why you're starting to see some of these, like a movie like Sinners, for example. It's the best movie I've seen in years. It's generating a lot of buzz now, but you're not seeing, like, I don't know, maybe I'm not explaining this the right way. You're seeing more of these independent films that are being self-financed and then sold for larger distribution versus a studio just being like, okay, this is just what we're going to do.
No, you said exactly what I was trying to say, but so much more concisely, is that the way that it used to be was that your blockbusters would float the art house films. And now, if it's not an independent, to your point, they're trying so hard to make it one and the same, to get the artsy recognition and to say, well, it doesn't have to be a popcorn movie. There can be so much more depth and layers to it. And, I think that could really, if these films were marketed the right way, be what saves the industry right now, is make your artsy films for sure. Maybe put those on the streamers because they don't draw an audience, and have your box office or your blockbusters float everything else. But back to the film at hand.
Yeah.
And the screenwriting. So Memphis is obviously sucked back into the lifestyle. Now he's got to assemble his crew, right? And this is where I think the most notable comp is where this feels like Ocean's 11. For me, though, yes, Ocean's is a heist movie, very much of the same ilk. I just feel like they did it so much better as far as developing the characters very quickly and giving us characters to root for, because I feel like some of these characters are very thin. Otto, to me, is the most fully developed because he's cleaned up his act. He's got his own garage now. His wife is working in the shop with him. I really like that character. We meet Donnie, who has cleaned up his act and is now teaching driver's ed badly. And the rest of the gang, they sort of wrangle through montage where Memphis and Otto are making the calls. Some of their old crew has passed away, some they can't find, and I wish they would have let this breathe a little bit more for comedy, because I wanted more backstory of where all of these shysters ended up, or I just felt like there could have been so many funny one-liners of why somebody got busted or why they're not doing this anymore, when they did such a good job of setting up Donnie where he's at right now. I just wanted more from this. But we do let it breathe a little bit when he goes and approaches Sway to try and get her to rejoin him.
Yeah, I think this is where it feels the most like Ocean's 11, but Ocean's 11 came out the year after this did. So again,
Right.
this was the precursor to Fast and the Furious and Ocean's 11. They came out the same year. But certainly these scripts had been floated, I'm sure, to multiple studios. So everybody knew what they passed on and who got it. So they had to counteract that with something similar of their own. And I think that's why you started to see things like Ocean's 11 was out in one studio, Universal had Fast and the Furious, Disney had Gone in 60 Seconds, and, you know, it kind of trickles down from there. And then the Italian Job came out, which is sort of like a little bit of everything. But with all of that said, there's a really great line here from Sway specifically when Nicolas Cage's character, when Memphis goes to pursue her the first time, and of course we know that there's a history there between the two of them romantically, when she asks him what time it is, and he says, you know, it's 5:30 or whatever it is. She's like, I gotta go to work. And he's like, you're at work, because she's at the auto body shop. And she's like, I have to get to my other job. She has a line that was so well written and so well delivered where she says, I learned that you have to work twice as hard when it's honest.
Yeah.
It's such a great line.
It really is. And her delivery is everything. It's so good. The only thing, this is where it clearly reads that she is the one that got away, right?
Yeah.
But I just wish we had a little bit more clarity of like, how bad did you burn her? Were you guys married or, did you, I mean, either way, he left her. Not cool. But if they were trying to settle down, have a family, and like clean up their life together, that would have been nice to know. But it doesn't seem that way because he had to leave to prevent his brother from pursuing this lifestyle. So he was very much still in it. But like, it would have been more interesting if they were still together and she wanted to clean up their act, but he just didn't do that for her. Like, you could have done a lot more to deepen their relationship here.
Right. You sort of get this fleshed out in one, I don't know, I don't remember if it's the exact next scene or if it's two scenes later. There's a conversation between Kip and Memphis where, you know, Kip basically says, like, you had all of this. You were so successful. I was the younger brother of the infamous Memphis Reigns. And, you know, Memphis tells him, like, I left so that history didn't repeat itself. I left so that you didn't follow in my footsteps. I had to get out of here. And then he's like, see, you start watching all of your friends die or get arrested or get in accidents. He's like, you think you build a family and then you start watching it crumble. And he basically calls him out and says, like, that's the exact thing that you're about to have happen to you. So again, there are parts of this film that have really strong dialogue that are written very well. I think the thing is, a movie like Ocean's 11, for example, has almost no action in it. It's not an action film. It's a straight heist movie. So most of what you're seeing in terms of fleshing out the characters, you have the runtime to do it. Because otherwise, you're watching them plan it, you're watching them practice it, and then you watch them carry out the heist in real time. A movie like this doesn't have the benefit of doing that because it's so action-driven and there's so much action in it that you know that of the 2 hours or so that the movie's going to run, you're going to eat at least half of that chasing cars around.
Right. And I mean, I think that's also the brilliance of Ocean's 11 too, is that it plays out in real time, but then they show you how they managed to pull it off. And, you know, that deconstructive, flashbacky storytelling, that's what really set it apart. Here, it's almost playing out in real time because we have a hard time stamp of 3 days. Then they decide once the crew is together that they're going to do this in one night so that the cops aren't right on their tail. And it's kind of like, you know, that's where for as much as the setup is sort of clunky and some of the dialogue isn't that great, you're hooked back in as the audience. As far as like 50 cars in one night, this is very ambitious. And, you know, through this, what I really like is there's this theme of Memphis's past coming back to haunt him. And we see that, you know, thrown right in his face with his brother now being involved in this lifestyle. But as they're trying to pull off this heist, people are finding out he's back in town. They keep tripping him up. So that's where the pacing is also very smart too, because it's not just racing the clock as far as getting the cars. It's broken up pretty nicely. So now we start scouting all of the cars. I love this idea that they name them with women's names so that if they're talking about it in casual conversation, nobody's going to overhear and figure them out. The most cagey scene, because this is a pretty tame movie for him, is when he goes to the Ferrari dealer and he pretends to be this big shot car shopping. I love this character. I don't know that I could have watched a whole movie with him like this, but knowing that Memphis is playing this part, this was a great bit of comedy. You know, and now you get the mix of old school and new school because Kip wants his buddies that he's been heisting with to be a part of this. But he also knows that in order to pull this off, his brother's going to need them. So it is a very natural way to get this massive cast together. And you have to have this many people because, again, 50 cars, it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, on average, if you're going from 8 o'clock at night until 8 o'clock in the morning, which was the deadline, you're looking at the average of over 4 cars per hour that you need to swipe. And they're all over the place. They're in multiple locations, right? Yeah, I think the old school meets new school is great. I think that they check each other really well. And I think that Memphis is a really interesting character because he's so wildly intelligent, because what they do really, really well, I think it's smart how they did this, was now you get this subplot where this rival gang is chasing them because they're like, hey, we were the ones that used to steal these cars and sell them. You're in town. You're taking money out of our pocket. We're going to take it out on you. So now it's not only are they trying to evade the police, who they know are on their tail, not only are they trying to keep Kip alive because they know that Calitri's going to kill him if they don't get it done, but now you have a third adversary in here, which is this gang. So, like, I thought that it's great that you now have 3 things going on. It never feels like it's too much. And I think that it kind of adds a layer to it that makes it far more interesting than just stealing cars for the sake of stealing cars.
You really needed that layer too because of the nature of the detectives being hot on his trail. And just being hyper aware of, well, we had this one car, or we had several of the Mercedes stolen, and coincidentally you're back in town. You know, they set that up from the very beginning, so you know it's going to be very cat and mouse. But that added layer of Memphis's past coming back to haunt him, plus Kip's sloppiness,
yes,
it was a really smart choice. So the first day they list out the cars. The second night, I believe, they go on the scout to figure out the who and the what of how they're actually going to take them. So they start playing walkie-talkie trivia, which is really fun because this is where you get to develop the characters a little bit. Just because they're all kind of joking around. Obviously, it's not that they're not taking this seriously, but it's just a nice bit of a breather where they're about to do something horrible, but they're all kind of calm, cool, and collected because they can joke with each other. And then you do get a little bit more of the character development through the pairings of who's off doing what. The only thing that I wish, and I mean, I don't necessarily wish that they would have leaned on this as a crutch as far as a map of where they're at, But I just wish we had a little bit more information as to where all of these cars are in relation to the garage and in relation to the pier, which we know is Long Beach, where they have to eventually drop them off. Because Atlee was working, he was one of the people that never cleaned up his act. So he's working for our villain. So he's going to oversee the actual delivery and make sure that these cars get on the shipping containers onto the boat. So it's just like, I kind of felt my mind wandering a little bit of, well, what cars are they using to go pick up the stolen cars, and how are they getting from one place to another? Because then once they start stealing them, it is sort of a montage, and they're all off in either pairs or in groups of 4. So somehow like once you drop the stolen cars off, how are you getting to your next point? Like, there was no Uber, there was no Lyft back in the day. There's not even smartphones with GPSs quite yet, which is why you could never make this film now. But that was the one thing where it's kind of like, how are we moving about here?
Yeah, and I think it's at this point where, for all of the things that they did right earlier with giving these added layers, I start to believe that maybe it becomes almost too much. To your point, you get into these montages, they're counting out how many cars they've gotten, so like that's easy to follow. But you start throwing things in, like the cops having dirty keys, having gotten to the Mercedes dealership, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That the fact that now they're staking out specifically those Mercedes vehicles because they know that they can get them, like, that's all well and good. We're going to now break into the police impound. Makes sense. We still have clean keys. Let's go get those cars. Then the dog eats the keys, and you need to wait for the dog to pass the keys to get... I understand for comedy why you do it. This entire thing is completely unnecessary. I don't think that it makes sense, and I don't think there's any reason why they had to do this.
Yeah, for as much as you do need comic relief, I feel like they could have maybe done it elsewhere, like in the dialogue, because you do have so much that is a pace killer for the heist itself. Like even, well, no, I don't think this was part of the heist. I think this might have been part of the scout, where they're at the diner and, yeah, when the rivals chase them into the diner, and then Memphis sees the big rig and he tells Kip to tie the hitch to their car. Yeah. And then they destroy the car, and then they get busted by the cop. Like, it's a good scene, but like, you don't even really get any bonding from Memphis and Kip in that moment. So it's kind of like, to your point, it's there for the sake of being there. Yeah. But I don't know that it's motivated enough where you necessarily need it to break everything up. The one scene that I did like, and again, this was before the heist, where it does sort of break everything up too. The detective goes to the garage where
yes.
One of the newbies has just stolen a car, and he's like, oh, I'm getting us ahead. And it's like, where did this car come from? Like, you can't just go rogue. And it had heroin in the trunk. So now they go on this elaborate show for the detective, and try it out, rev our engine, like, we're cleaned up, we just zhuzhed up this car, and why don't you give it a try? And the heroin is spilled on the floor, but the exhaust pipe blows it all over the place. Yeah. So they don't get caught. Like, that's funny to me. That was worth doing. To your point, the heist should just be the heist. And if you need the comedy peppered in, which they do too, like with the car that has the snake in it, there were ways of inserting it where you could just carry through the night and that's it. Because then, we have 48 cars. They get to the 48. They're up against the deadline. Everything's looking good. And then, of course, that there's going to be one more conflict before they're able to pull this off and save Kip. But I feel like there's an entire tonal shift because it's a Cars movie, so we need a car chase. And I feel like in comparison to the heist parts of it, this last car chase with Eleanor sort of drags.
It takes way too long. I think
Right?
that
Yeah.
the pacing of the film was really good. The heist itself, watching it play out, was a lot of fun. But there are scenes that just take way too long. One scene, before I get into this car chase, one scene is the scene where Memphis and Sway start to rekindle the romance, but she doesn't want to, but she does, but she doesn't, but she does, in the Lamborghini that they're getting ready to steal. Like, I understand that you need to wait out stealing the Lamborghini because the two people that are in the house, they're
Having relations.
at least they're starting to, but they're still within an eye shot of the vehicle, so they have to wait for them to
They're
move
in front
about.
of a window, for crying out loud.
Well, they have to wait until they move about into a different room so that they can't see them steal the car. Like, that's fine, and you know that you're going to get the scene where the two of them start to rekindle something, but it drags on for too long. And then you get this never-ending car chase in Eleanor. To your point, it's a car movie. You're going to have big, elaborate chase scenes. It's basically, if you saw the trailer, this is why you went to the movie. You went to the movie to see this. But I think even by late 90s, early 2000s standards, I think that these scenes, this one in particular, just went too long. And where all the pacing was good up front, this is where it's a pace killer.
Especially because it's like, all right, it's a car movie in LA. We have to get certain shots in. So, like, of course, there's like the tight corners as they're driving down streets they shouldn't be driving down. But then you have the LA River shot, the grease lightning. You know what I'm talking about. Of course, they have to drive through there. And it's the perfect time of day. It is. The lighting is beautiful. The cinematography is awesome. But you're having a long chase for the sake of having to have these shots. And then it also gets a little bit confusing because Memphis does lead them to a pier, but it looks like the one where he needs to be to drop off
Yes.
the car, and it's not, because then he has to do the jump over the bridge and ride up the tow truck and fly over, what is it, like 3 or 4 cars?
More than that.
Probably, yeah. To then get to the Long Beach Pier. That part actually got very confusing. I'm like, why are you not ditching the car or leading the cops to the big bad at this point? Because the jig is up.
Right. Or how are you going to evade this helicopter? Which they did very smartly when he went through a tunnel underneath the airport, and because there was air traffic that was controlling everything because you had incoming and outgoing planes, they could not fly the helicopter there. So, like, that's the thing. Like, nothing... I thought that they left very few stones unturned. I think a lot of the decision-making that they made in regards to make it make sense actually did make sense.
Right.
And it couldn't just be, well, he's driving really fast, and he's faster than a helicopter, which is what a lot of these movies would have done, and you would have just bought it, even though you know it's not possible. That I thought was really smart. I thought it was also really smart that they pushed him past the deadline. And it's 12 minutes. He makes it. It's 12 minutes later, and there's some scratches on the car because he's had to evade the police, and they lost the mirror because he had to evade the police. And that becomes Calitri's jumping off point for, you know what, I got all my cars, but you didn't stick to my timeline, so I'm going to kill you anyway. Like, and now I don't, like, this is where he went from being, like, eccentric, funny villain to, now I got what I needed. I'm going to kill you anyway. You needed that level of diabolic, and they pay off on it.
That's the one instance where this long chase sequence works, because you're so concerned with Memphis evading the cops, you kind of forget that there's someone else that's even worse at this point that he has to answer to or escape from. But I like how, I had said it before, you're at the pier, why not just lead the cops to Kalitri? But that's why I think they did do it as different piers, because this is another conflict that they're establishing. You missed the deadline, Kalitri's going to, and he says at that point too, as long as I get a reins, I don't care which one it is. So I like that everything didn't necessarily have to end with the car chase, and we get one more element of they're running through the warehouse. And that's how eventually the detective is led to Kalitri. I like that Kip and Atlee are the ones who actually bail Memphis out in the last possible second.
Yeah.
And now the role is reversed where Kip is showing up to save his brother. I thought that was really well done. I love how all of this is shot in Kalitri's warehouse. There's even Memphis toying with him where he starts breaking the furniture, which is really funny. So I like how it all comes to a head here. I think that was a pretty good way to land the plane, especially when he does eventually take Kalitri out and he lands in his own coffin.
Yeah. You know that it's going to happen. It's cheesy and it's crazy, but it doesn't make it any less satisfying. The thing that kills me in this scene, though, is, and I hate all villains that do this, when you've got a gun to the head of your adversary and you just keep talking about how you're gonna kill him. You either do it or you don't. In this case, I wish that Castlebeck could have, like, if he would have seen out of his peripherals that Memphis was closing in, just keep talking and buy yourself the time. Instead of, he didn't know that Memphis was there, and it's just that Kalitri can't shut up. That is the one thing at the end of this movie that I'm like, you did the thing.
And worse for me is the dialogue where it's like, I understand, Memphis, why you had to do this for your brother. I understand why you came back, and I'm going to let you go. Just let you have a handshake agreement.
Yeah.
Like you did the last time, just part company friends. You're going to do the bust on the cars that are in the shipping containers. So you're still going to get your win, and you're going to get to clean up the mess and solve the crime. And I'm going to get away with it. It's a wink and a nod. It doesn't need to be explained.
Yeah. And they celebrate with a barbecue at the end.
Which I liked. I like, that they're grilling on the open hood, that they've retrofit that as the barbecue. The only thing, okay, so Kip gives him the car, but this is some of the worst acting I've ever seen Nicolas Cage do. Keys? What are these? You don't know what keys are by this point? Come on now.
You just mentioned how you spotted that they had retrofitted a barbecue into the hood of the car. So, seeing as this is Jerry Bruckheimer, and this is a remake, very loose, and he tends to use some of the same cast, and he has a history with Disney, I'm wondering what else we could have found if you are a super sleuth. Where in the Film is brought to you by our friends at Where in the Park, a seek and find card game that you can play in your favorite parks. Whether it's Disney or Universal, SeaWorld, and more, Where in the Park challenges you to spot those little details that so many can miss. To order your game packs, visit monoreelradio.com and click our affiliate link for a 10% discount today.
Did I take yours?
You probably did.
Oh, I thought it was the barbecue.
No, it was not.
Okay.
But there is something else that I spotted. And it wasn't so much an Easter egg so much as it was the early introduction of an actor that has gone on to have not only a very prosperous career in Hollywood, but also what I believe is likely his first foray into Disney before he eventually became a mainstay in the MCU. When they are waiting for the dog to pass the keys.
Yes.
Two of our characters are walking through what is determined to be a bad neighborhood that they should not be walking in. And he is approached by a couple of the locals to that neighborhood that are not shy to explain that you're in the wrong neighborhood, buddy. And the one that is carrying all the dialogue is a 25-year-old, and I didn't look to see how many film credits he had under his belt. It is a 25-year-old Michael Pena.
It is. Yes, you are absolutely right. I didn't put it together, but he looked so familiar. But yes, that is Michael
But
Pena.
he is very, very... You know what it is? It was the voice that did it. Because, like, I kind of looked down for a second because I was taking my notes. And admittedly, I was like, I don't have a where in the film yet. He does... I mean, he looks like himself, but very young. But his voice hasn't changed. The voice is what triggered it. And then I looked closely and I went, no, that's him. So yes, Michael Pena.
Especially because of that cadence too, like when he's doing, those runners in Ant-Man all those details. Nice catch there. You're picking them all out lately. Mine's not so much an Easter egg as much as it is a production error. I noticed some bad ADR throughout, particularly with Nicolas Cage and Angelina Jolie. The two most seasoned actors probably at this, but well, maybe not, except for Robert Duvall. We're going to talk about our cast in a moment here. But some of the looping was really, really bad.
All right, let's talk about our cast. Starting with Nicolas Cage. Anybody that has followed the show for a long time knows how much I love this man. I love Nicolas Cage. He's been in so many films that I grew up watching, and like to this day, he makes 47 movies a week, so he's always around. But I love Cage, and I thought he was really good in this movie because I felt like, now, as we've pointed out, there were a lot of things that came after this where they kind of all weave into the same universe, whether it be Italian Job, which I believe is Jason Statham, and of course Fast and the Furious, Vin Diesel, right? But Cage in this, like, really makes it his own. If they made this movie today, you would never think to cast an actor like Nicolas Cage because you'd go for one of these big-time, Hollywood superhero-esque. Like, I could see them, if they were to do this again, like, I could see them going with the Hemsworths.
Tom Hardy, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they would go with Cage. But Cage brought something to this. He's not jacked up muscular. He's not going to be doing all of his own stunts per se. But he brought a headiness to the character. When he gets really cagey, it makes sense for the part that he's playing.
Yeah.
But Nicolas Cage, people, because he's gone so over the top, they forget that he is an Oscar-winning actor. Like, he can give very nuanced performances. I'm not saying that this was one of them, but I'm saying that he definitely brought, I think, a layer to Memphis where he is trying to be the big brother the whole time. Like, at the end of this movie really is about brothers. That's what this movie's about more than anything else. And
Sure.
I don't think you push that across the finish line if you don't have somebody like Nicolas Cage in the role.
That's a really good point. I hadn't even considered that just from the jump, it was an interesting casting choice for this film, that they didn't go with somebody that looks like a typical gearhead or the muscle guy. They didn't go for the Cars guy,
Yeah.
But I think that's also where this film does take it one step further, because it's not like the Fast and the Furious. It's not about the cars and the chase. It's about the heist. So there's an element of this where you also need a little bit of, I dare say, a mob boss quality.
Yeah.
But he doesn't play it like that. He doesn't, I don't feel like I'm watching him trying to be Brando in The Godfather. This is more, it's the leadership quality that he brings to Memphis. But I would even say that this is probably one of my favorite roles of his, because I am not like you. I do not worship this man. I do think that he's very much over the top sometimes. I really like him in National Treasure, obviously. Like, I buy him in that, and I buy this because I think he's so about like process and all that. It does come off a little bit pretentious, and I find it very hard to watch him because I feel like it's always Nicolas Cage's, he's thinking so much about his interpretation of the character. You know what I mean? I feel like he actually lost himself in this guy. So one of his better roles, in my opinion.
Let's talk about the actor that is cast opposite him as his brother. Giovanni Ribisi plays Kip. Giovanni Ribisi is such an underrated talent.
So versatile.
He's incredibly versatile. I can see a future where Giovanni Ribisi, I can see him popping off sometime in the next 5 years, having this career resurgence like a Sam Rockwell, for like all of a sudden Sam Rockwell came out of, I'm not going to say he came out of nowhere, but like there was like a 4 or 5 year period where, oh, it's nominated for Best Picture. Oh, Sam Rockwell's in it. Yeah. I can see the same thing happening sometime soon for Giovanni Ribisi. I don't know why, but I just have a feeling that it's coming. He's really good here. He does a really good job of playing the reckless little brother who doesn't come off like a brat, who finds himself in trouble in spite of himself. I think that he plays this in a way where there's this just naivete, and it's recklessness in youth. It's not even arrogant. It's just that he doesn't know any better. And the whole time, he is just trying to be Memphis. He is trying to be his older brother. And again, I don't think that you can pull that off without an actor like this.
I completely agree with you. I mean, he's been in so many huge titles, but he never really gets the lead. This was one of his first leads, but like when you think about what he was in, Friends, he was probably most known for at this point for playing Phoebe's brother. And then I think most people would know him from Ted and his work with Seth MacFarlane. But here, you know, it really does show off his chops as a serious actor, because even though they're grown, he still gave Kip that like little boy quality of looking up to his brother and wanting to follow in his footsteps. And I think that comes from the character's sloppiness and the impulses that he's just trying so hard to be like Memphis. And I think a lesser actor wouldn't have given the character so much depth.
Unfortunately, I think the most talented person in this film is the one that was the most wasted, and that's Angelina Jolie. It's nothing that she did wrong in this movie, and I think that they started building Sway to be something bigger. I don't know if it ended up on the cutting room floor, but it seems like the character was half-baked and they didn't finish her. And I don't put that on her, but I felt by the end of this movie that this character could have been anybody.
I agree. I can think of a particular instance where it seems like something was cut, where she tells Memphis she doesn't want to go back to this lifestyle. And right before they're ready to start rolling the plan out, she shows up and she's like, I'm here for Kip. Besides being with his brother, and again, we don't know if you were married or dating or what relationship do you have to Kip where you're invested in saving him? I think that it struggles from not giving this character enough screen time, and probably a lot of it comes from not knowing how to write a female character. But especially, so this character was not in the original film. They wrote this for her. She's coming off of her Girl Interrupted Oscar win. You completely squandered having her in this film.
Robert Duvall plays Otto, and I love Robert Duvall. I love him in Days of Thunder. I think I sort of just associate him with that character when I see him here, because he plays very much the same sort of character. But he's great. He brings comic relief where it's necessary, and I think that he brings a calmness that you need, because nobody else in this movie is calm. Nobody else in this movie, I mean, Memphis is very smart, but nobody seems quite as composed, and I think that you needed this to sort of ground the entire cast. It's an ensemble cast, but I think Robert Duvall was the perfect person to put in this role.
That's exactly my note. This character grounds the film. He's so good. Even just the fact that they wrote him a wife, even though she doesn't have a lot of lines. The wife, by the way, is played by Frances Fisher, who you'll recognize with that shocking red hair. She is Ruth in Titanic. I picked her out right away. But to see her in the jumpsuit, if Titanic is the only thing you know her from, it's kind of a wild transition. But just having her and the dog, it paints such a complete picture. And that's what I meant before when I said that I feel like Otto is the most fully developed character.
You have Will Patton plays Atlee Jackson. Will Patton has worked with Jerry Bruckheimer before, namely in Armageddon. I thought that he was good here. I thought that his chemistry with Nicolas Cage was really good. I'm not going to say that this could have been anybody because he didn't play it well. I just feel like he was sort of the man behind the curtain the entire time. I wish we would have seen just a little bit more of their history. I'm not saying I needed to see more of the character because I think you need him to go away long enough where you sort of forget about him. And then you remember him when he pops up at the most opportune moments. I just wish we would have had a little bit more of their history fleshed out.
Yeah, or maybe like another scene with him where they're starting to drop off the cars instead of just at the very end where he's giving like the final count. Because I like him as sort of the double agent. Yes, he's working for the bad guy, but it's what he had to do to get by because Memphis left. So there is a lot of story there and a lot of, probably a lot that could have been unpacked, but I like that he shows up for Memphis in the end.
Christopher Eccleston plays Raymond Calitri. You talked earlier about how eccentric he is, and that's great, but British villain. That's really just what this is. Nothing against him, but it could have just been hire British, make him a little brooding, give him some eccentric qualities, and we'll hire him. That's really what it took to play this character.
Yeah, I agree with you that he could have been anybody, but that's not to say that he did a disservice to the role. I thought he did a really good job with it. I think he played the eccentricity really well, and was able to balance that with being so serious. But, I appreciate, like I said earlier, he didn't go over the top. He didn't need to be screaming and yelling to paint the picture that he's menacing. So to me, that always makes for a great villain.
Chai McBride plays Donnie. He is the perfect comic relief in this.
Yes.
Every time he's on screen, I'm crying. He was phenomenal. I like him in basically everything I've seen him in. This was exactly what you needed to make the film lighthearted in those moments that you needed it to not be so serious.
Yeah, he was sort of like the comedy really came from his reluctance. Like he would sort of roll his eyes and he didn't want to jump in full speed, but you knew that he was committed.
Yeah. Delroy Lindo and Timothy Oliphant play detectives Castlebeck and Drykoff. The two of them good together. I love that Castlebeck has this history with Memphis to the point where, I know you're gonna have a partner, but Drykoff sort of just seemed like he was there. Castlebeck is one of the better characters in this movie. And without him, I just don't think you have a complete film.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But he's so good. He's good with both, to your point. Like, great with Memphis. They don't have a lot of screen time together, but there's such a deep-rooted history. But I also love him as a partner. I think, though, his chemistry as an actor is what elevates the character, which you really, really needed because the screenwriting just wasn't there. The screenwriting was so Detective 101, Cop 101, but he stopped it from feeling like it was completely dragging.
So final thoughts on Gone in 60 Seconds. I'm going to go first. To your point, The screenwriting, is it great? No. Is it horrible? No. This is a popcorn movie. This is exactly what it was supposed to be. It's supposed to be a bunch of people stealing cars. If you've seen the trailer, you've seen the movie for the most part, with the added layer of there's a kidnapping/ransom sort of thing going on here. Frankly, this is going to be an unpopular opinion. I think this is better than The Fast and the Furious, and there's two reasons for that, and I don't care how many movies that they've made with The Fast and the Furious, because after the first movie, they've made far too many. The thing with The Fast and the Furious is they've gotten so ridiculous with the things that they're doing that it becomes laughable, and I know that that's part of the appeal of it, is how stupid it's become. But now you've really leaned into the stupidity to the point where I can't take the movie seriously whatsoever. The other thing is that this movie is timeless in that stealing cars and trafficking vehicles to be put overseas, especially high-end cars, try as you might, this is something that happens all of the time. The Fast and the Furious started because they were stealing DVD players. The first movie is about stealing DVD players. So that in and of itself completely dates the movie. So I don't think kids are going to start watching movies now. They'll watch for the action and they'll watch for the lunacy of The Fast and the Furious, but I think they would just chuckle at the fact that that was the entire premise of this franchise, is stealing DVD players. This is more timeless than that. Watch it for the fun of it, and just watch it for the fun of it. You are not watching this for any sort of award-winning film, even though it has a handful of award winners in it. So that is my final say on the Gone in 60 Seconds.
I'm going to disagree with you because I do feel the movie is dated, but not because it screams late 90s, 2000s. I think the genre is very much a product of its time. I think that especially because with all of the tech stuff we have now and, you know, smartphones and GPSs and trackers, the cop, cat, and mouse chase all falls apart. You couldn't do this movie now, which is not necessarily something to hold against it. If I'm being honest, the first time that I watched this, my attention span was what was Gone in 60 Seconds. And usually, you know, if I'm sitting for a movie, like I'm fully invested. Unless it's one of my comfort movies, I don't just put a movie on to have on in the background. I want to sit and I want to watch it. But man, I struggled to stay focused on this one because the characters were so thin. And that was the first time through. Knowing that I had to do it again, I actually did appreciate it a little bit more the second time. I definitely appreciate this more as a heist movie than I do, you know, a Cars movie. But I will say, to your point, if you go in with low expectations, if you know that this is just going to be an action movie for the sake of an action movie, I definitely think it's a good watch. I think having such a stacked cast is what makes it so misleading, because you think there's going to be so much more depth than there actually is because you attracted this caliber of actors to it. But unfortunately, it's just not there. Beautifully, beautifully shot, though. So if you've not seen it yet, you know, watch it for the fun of it, exactly as you said.
Yeah, but Disney lost a ton of money on this movie. It cost them $90 million to make, and it made a little bit less than $250 million at the box office, which 25 years ago would be like a good take. But they marketed the movie so heavily, and I think that's why I always thought it was bigger than it was, because you couldn't escape it. They ended up having to take a write-down on this for over $200 million.
Oof.
So they put a lot of money into marketing. But we want to know what you have to say about Gone in 60 Seconds. You can let us know on all forms of social media at Monoreel Radio, or you can send us an email, monoreelradio@gmail.com. News of the Week is coming up, but first, a quick break.
News of the Week is proudly sponsored by KMV Travel. KMV Travel is a boutique travel agency that helps families plan personalized vacations and create unforgettable memories in the most magical place on earth. Planning for a Disney vacation can be stressful, but it doesn't need to be when you're working with a KMV travel specialist who will work with you to customize the perfect vacation for you and your family. Your KMV travel advisor will help you determine what parks to visit on each day, ensure you know the ins and outs of essential tools like My Disney Experience and Genie Plus apps, assist with dining reservations, and of course, share their favorite hacks so you get the most out of your vacation. Visit kmvtravel.com to start making magic now.
When we were planning our first family trip to Disney World, Jackie was the first person that we thought of.
Jackie helped us with every step of the planning, and she helped us pick the right hotel for our itinerary and our budget.
She also gave us great recommendations when it came to scheduling our parks, our dining reservations, and the attractions.
These days, it feels like there's a lot that goes into planning a Disney trip, and there's a lot that we just didn't know about Disney World, and we're just so thankful for Jackie's advice in making it all a little bit easier.
Yeah, when we got to the property, we realized we wanted to add on another park day, so we texted Jackie early in the morning, and she got back to us right away, and that really helped us make it happen.
We had some amazing meals and drinks. We went to Cinderella's Royal Table, we went to Oga's Cantina, we rode Rise of the Resistance without waiting on a long line. And on Jackie's recommendation, we saw the Epcot fireworks from the Skyliner.
This was an unforgettable family trip to Disney World, and Jackie made it happen.
Thank you, Jackie.
Is it too early to call Elio a flop?
Absolutely. I didn't even want to talk about this and add to the noise, but I'm so riled up over it because people are saying it's a flop. It's been a week. I mean, I know you want to recoup box office numbers immediately in your first weekend, but just because it hasn't done that yet, it doesn't mean that it's a bad movie. And I feel bad because I feel like this movie had the odds stacked against it from the beginning. This was supposed to come out a year or two ago. They released the trailer for it. I remember the marketing was very heavy, and the premise was interesting because, it was a funny subversion of expectations. The aliens come, they pick up the kid, and they think that he is the leader of the free world. So I was like, there's a lot of room for comedy here. And, kudos Pixar with a fresh original concept. Everybody's pounding the table for we're tired of sequels and remakes. Well, here we are with a brand new film and nobody's going to see it. Yet, it released last weekend. You still have a lot of graduations happening for schools in the Northeast. You had a heat wave following that. So I would like to think that because it's just so unbelievable, it's hotter in New York than it is in Florida right now. So I'm hoping that because now kids are out of school and you want to take them to go cool off, the second week is going to give it the boost that it needs. But there is I wish all of these headlines would stop having a correlation between money and whether or not the film is good.
I think the problem is that, if I'm being honest with you, I don't care. I didn't even know that this movie was coming out.
You did. I told you.
No, you told me. That's when I found out that the movie was coming out. I kept thinking it was coming out later and later and later. Why is that? Because I don't feel like Disney did market this movie as heavily the second time around. I feel like they marketed it more for its initial release date, and I feel like they've already, in their minds, passed it off as, it'll hit the streamer by Labor Day. I feel like they've already given up on it, because I think about when you watch Waking Sleeping Beauty, and they talk about how The Rescuers Down Under didn't do well its opening weekend, and they pulled all the advertising and threw their hands up and moved on to the next project. I kind of feel like that's what they did here before them. But the difference is they did it before the movie was even released.
Which is what they do with Pixar. They did it with Luca. They did it with Turning Red. They finally did release them in theaters eventually, but this is unfortunately nothing new. But I believe the reason they pulled it the first time was because they wanted to change the story.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that also has to do with not marketing it so much because of all these story changes.
It could be. But hopefully it does have a good second week. I know we're looking forward to going and seeing the film. Thank you so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, but there are many ways that you can support the show. Please give us a rating wherever you listen to your podcast. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them. And of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make yours a magical one.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.